Deserted on a date, a billionaire stranger approached and said, "He'll regret letting you go." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to the story. Emily Parker had been looking forward to this night for weeks. She had picked the perfect dress, styled her hair just the right way, and even had her nails done for the occasion. Her date with Derek was supposed to be special, a celebration of their growing relationship. She had been texting him all afternoon, excited and smiling at every message. As she arrived at the upscale restaurant, the elegant ambience immediately made her feel like a princess. The sparkling lights, soft music, and the bustling energy of the place made it the perfect spot for a romantic dinner. But there was one problem: Derek was late. At first, Emily brushed it off. Maybe he got caught in traffic, she thought. But as the minutes ticked by, her hope began to fade. She checked her phone again, only to find a simple message from him. "Sorry, something came up. Can we reschedule?" The words hit her like a ton of bricks. She stared at the screen, feeling a wave of disappointment wash over her. The excitement she had felt earlier quickly turned into a cold, uncomfortable loneliness. She looked around the restaurant, watching couples laugh and enjoy their meals, and suddenly she felt invisible. The waiter came over to check on her, offering a sympathetic smile, but it didn't make the situation any better. Emily tried to hold back her tears, but she could feel them welling up. She couldn't understand how someone she trusted could treat her this way. Just as she was about to grab her things and leave, a voice from across the room interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" She looked up, startled, and saw a man standing there. He was tall, with sharp features and an air of confidence that immediately caught her attention. He wore a tailored suit that screamed wealth, and his gaze was intense yet kind. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, it felt as if the whole world had paused. "I couldn't help but notice you sitting here all alone," he said with a warm smile. "Mind if I join you?" Emily blinked, still processing what was happening. She hadn't expected anyone to approach her, let alone someone as strikingly handsome and well-dressed as him. But there was something about his presence that made her feel seen. For the first time in the evening, she didn't feel like just another face in the crowd. Sure," she said hesitantly, not sure what to make of this sudden intrusion. The man slid into the chair opposite her, his demeanor calm and relaxed, as if he had all the time in the world. "My name's Julian," he said, extending a hand. "Julian Blackwood." "Emily," she replied, shaking his hand, still in a bit of a daze. "Nice to meet you, Emily. So what's your story? You seem like you've been waiting a while." She glanced down at her phone, then back at him, unsure of how much to reveal. But something about his genuine curiosity made her feel comfortable enough to share. "I was supposed to be on a date, but I guess he's not coming." Julian raised an eyebrow, his expression one of quiet disbelief. "That's awful," he said. "You deserve better than that." His words, though simple, were exactly what she needed to hear. It felt like a balm to her bruised ego, a gentle reminder that she wasn't defined by someone else's indifference. As they talked, Emily began to relax. Julian's confidence was contagious, and she found herself laughing at his jokes, enjoying the moment despite the disappointment of the evening. She couldn't help but feel drawn to him, his kindness, his easy charm, and the way he seemed to genuinely care. But just as she was starting to enjoy the conversation, a familiar voice broke through the moment. "Emily, what are you doing here?" It was Derek. He stood at the entrance of the restaurant, looking surprised and slightly sheepish. Emily felt a wave of anger and hurt rise up in her chest, but before she could say anything, Julian stood up. His height and presence immediately commanded attention. "I think it's time for you to go," Julian said, his voice firm but not unkind. "She deserves better than someone who keeps her waiting." Derek looked at him, confused, then back at Emily, but before he could say another word, Julian turned to her and offered a reassuring smile. "He'll regret losing you," Julian said softly. Emily felt a flutter in her chest. Something about those words made her heart skip a beat. Was it just the moment, or was there something more to this encounter? Whatever it was, Emily knew one thing for sure. Tonight had just taken an unexpected turn. Emily watched as Derek stood there, still in shock, not knowing how to respond to Julian's sharp words. She could feel the weight of the moment settling around them, her heart racing as she took in the situation. For a brief second, she wondered if she had made the right choice. Derek was still her boyfriend, despite everything. But Julian's confidence, his presence, felt like a lifeline thrown to her in the middle of an ocean of uncertainty. Derek, who had been acting distant and dismissive, now looked almost insignificant. Emily felt the warmth of the room slip away as she turned her gaze back to him, her voice steady but full of the emotions she had been bottling up. "Derek, I think it's time you leave," she said, surprising herself with how firm her voice sounded. Derek's face fell, his shock turning into frustration. "Emily, come on, this is ridiculous." "I told you I'm sorry," he said, his voice rising slightly. Julian didn't even flinch. His eyes were locked on Derek, unwavering. "She's made her decision," he said calmly, then turned to Emily. "You don't owe him anything." The words hung in the air, and Derek's expression twisted in anger. But Emily couldn't bring herself to care. She had already made up her mind. "I'm done, Derek. It's over." Derek stood there for a moment, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for the right words, but nothing came out. He glanced between Emily and Julian, a mix of disbelief and bitterness on his face. Without another word, he turned and walked out, leaving Emily and Julian alone. The quiet that followed was deafening. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Julian gave her a moment to breathe, to process everything that had just happened. Emily sat back in her chair, her hands trembling slightly, her heart still beating. Fast from the confrontation, Julian, sensing her need for space, waited patiently. He didn't push her to speak, but after a few moments, he smiled softly. "I hope you know you deserve better than that," he said gently. Emily looked at him, a mix of gratitude and confusion in her eyes. She had barely known this man, and yet his presence had felt like the most comforting thing in the world tonight. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Julian nodded, his eyes kind but serious. "No one should make you feel small or unimportant, Emily. Not him, not anyone." Emily could feel her heart swelling with a mix of emotions, relief, fear, and maybe even a little hope. She had no idea where this moment was leading, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was in control of her own story. Julian's phone buzzed, and he glanced down at it, briefly distracted. When he looked up again, his expression softened. "I should get going. But if you ever need someone to talk to, don't hesitate to reach out." Emily nodded, unsure of what to say. This night had turned into something she never expected, and she didn't quite know how to process it. Julian stood up, giving her one last smile before he turned and walked away. Emily watched him leave, her mind spinning. She could still feel the remnants of his words, lingering in the air. "He'll regret losing you." She didn't know what it meant, or what would happen next, but one thing was clear. She wasn't going to let herself be treated like that again. Tonight had marked a turning point. Emily stood up slowly, her thoughts racing. She knew she needed to take control of her life again. She didn't need Derek or anyone else to define her. She had just experienced something unexpected, something that felt like the first step toward something better. And though the future was uncertain, Emily felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. She wasn't alone anymore. Emily sat in the now empty restaurant, the soft hum of the background music seeming louder in the silence that followed Julian's departure. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. What had just happened? She had been stood up by Derek, and in what felt like an instant, a stranger, a man who didn't even know her, had stepped in to offer comfort, strength, and words that would echo in her mind for days to come. Julian's parting words played over and over in her head. "He'll regret losing you." They weren't just words, they felt like a promise. A promise that she wasn't the one at fault. She wasn't the one who was unworthy of love. She wasn't the one who had made a mistake. It was Derek who had made a mistake, and she had just been brave enough to walk away from it. The flicker of hope she had felt earlier now felt more like a fire, something real, something she could hold on to. Emily stood up slowly, her legs feeling a little shaky but her heart light. She took a deep breath, looking out the large window to the city lights below. The night felt different now, not sad or empty, but filled with possibility. As she walked out of the restaurant, Her phone buzzed in her hand. It was a message from Derek. "I'm really sorry, Emily. I shouldn't have done that. Can we talk?" She stared at the message, her finger hovering over the screen. Part of her wanted to respond, to give him a chance to explain himself, but another part, her stronger self, knew that there was no point. The fact that he had even sent this message so late in the evening after he had treated her like an option was enough to tell her everything she needed to know. She deleted the message without replying, making a vow to herself that she wouldn't be that person again, the one who accepted less than she deserved. Emily had been that person for too long. She had been the one to forgive over and over, the one to make excuses. Not anymore. As she stepped into the cool night air, she felt lighter than she had in a long time. It was as if all the weight that Derek had put on her shoulders had lifted in an instant. She didn't need him. She didn't need anyone who didn't see her value. Walking through the city streets, Emily's thoughts drifted to Julian. She didn't know much about him. Only his name, his calm presence, and how he had made her feel when he spoke those words. There was something about him, something that felt different from anyone she had met before. He had stood up for her when no one else had, and in that moment, he had made her believe that she deserved more. As she continued walking, her phone buzzed again. This time it was from her best friend, Sarah. "I heard what happened with Derek. Are you okay?" Emily smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. She quickly typed a reply, "I'm good. I think I just learned a really important lesson tonight." Sarah responded almost instantly. "I'm so proud of you, Emily. You're so strong. I'm here for you always." Emily felt a surge of gratitude. Sarah had been with her through everything, the ups and downs, the good times and the bad. She was the one who had always reminded her that she was enough, even when she didn't believe it herself. After a few more texts, Emily put her phone away and continued her walk. As she turned the corner and began heading toward her apartment, she found herself smiling. The night hadn't gone as planned, but in many ways, it had gone exactly how it needed to. She was finally free. Free from the weight of a relationship that had been holding her back. Free from the doubt and the fear that had kept her stuck in a place where she didn't belong. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was standing on the edge of something new, something exciting. A fresh start. The future felt wide open, and as she walked the familiar path home, Emily couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, she was exactly where she needed to be. As the days passed, Emily felt like she was slowly finding herself again. The weight that had been pressing on her shoulders for so long seemed to lift with each passing moment. The feeling of freedom she had experienced that night was still fresh in her mind. She had made the right decision, and now, for the first time in a long time, she was living for herself. She woke up each day with a renewed sense of purpose, and even small moments, like her morning coffee or a walk through the park, felt like tiny victories. Her friends noticed the change too. Sarah was the first to comment on it. "You seem different, Emily," she said one afternoon when they were having coffee together. "I don't know how to explain it, but you look happier." Emily smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I am," she replied. "For the first time in a long time, I'm not letting anyone make me feel like I'm not enough." Sarah beamed at her. "I'm proud of you, seriously. You've always been strong, but now it feels like you're really owning it." It wasn't just Sarah who noticed. At work, Emily's colleagues seemed to sense a shift in her energy. She was more focused, more confident, and her creativity had flourished. The designs she had been working on for the past few weeks were receiving rave reviews, and her boss even complimented her on her innovative ideas. It felt good to be recognized for her talent, not for being someone's partner or just another employee. It was as if the universe was rewarding her for finally choosing herself. Still, even with all the positive changes, Emily couldn't shake the memory of Julian. He had made a lasting impression on her, and she couldn't help but wonder what he was doing now. He had been a stranger, yet he had offered her something Derek never had, validation. His words had cut through the noise of her insecurities and had made her believe in herself again. Over the next week, Emily found herself thinking about him more often. She had no idea if she would ever see him again, but there was something about their brief encounter that lingered in her mind. It wasn't just the fact that he was attractive or wealthy, it was how he made her feel, important, worthy, and not alone. One evening, after finishing a long day at work, Emily sat down on her couch, scrolling through her phone. As if by fate, she came across an article about Julian Blackwood, the billionaire entrepreneur. She had heard his name a few times before, but this time it caught her attention. The article was about his latest business venture, a new tech startup that was poised to revolutionize the industry. It was clear that Julian was more than just a wealthy man. He was someone who had made a name for himself through hard work and determination. Emily read through the article, fascinated by his story, and found herself drawn to him in a way she hadn't expected. She couldn't help but admire his ambition and vision. It was then that she realized she wanted to know more about him. The following evening, Emily did something she had never done before. She took a deep breath, opened her email, and typed out a message. Dear Mr. Blackwood, I hope this message finds you well. My name is Emily Parker, and we met recently at a restaurant. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for your kindness that night. Your words meant more to me than you know, and I've been thinking about them ever since. If you're ever in town, I'd love to meet for coffee sometime and get to know you better. Thank you again for everything. Sincerely, Emily Parker. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. It was a small step, but it felt like a big one. Emily wasn't sure what would come of it, but for the first time in a long time, she was taking a chance on herself, on what could be. She had no expectations, but the idea of meeting Julian again made her heart race. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen, wondering what would happen next. The next few days felt like a blur for Emily. She went about her routine, but her mind kept drifting back to Julian. It wasn't just his presence that had left an impression on her. It was the way he had made her feel seen and heard in a moment when she felt completely invisible. His words were still fresh in her mind, echoing in her thoughts. He'll regret losing you. The simple yet powerful sentiment had sparked something inside her, a fire she hadn't felt in a long time. She had let go of someone who didn't value her, but now she was thinking about what might come next. Her email to Julian felt like a small leap into the unknown, but it was a step she was proud of. She had chosen to take control of her own story, and it had felt empowering. Emily was about to shake up the life she had known. It was a Wednesday evening when she received a response. It had only been a day since she sent her email, but it felt like an eternity. She checked her inbox and saw the subject line. Your kind message. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it. Dear Emily, thank you for your thoughtful message. It's rare to receive such kind words, especially from someone who has only just met me. I'm glad I could be of help that night. I would love to meet for coffee sometime. I'll be in town next week, and if you're free, I would be honored to get to know you better. Let me know if that works for you. Best regards, Julian Blackwood. Emily could hardly believe her eyes. Julian had responded, and not only that, he had suggested meeting her for coffee. The thought of it made her heart race. It felt surreal, yet so exciting. She quickly typed back a response, not wasting a second. Dear Julian, thank you so much for getting back to me. I would love to meet for coffee next week. Let me know when you're available, and I'll be there. Looking forward to it. Best, Emily Parker. She hit send and immediately felt a surge of excitement and nervousness flood her. She had no idea what this meeting might lead to, but she was ready for whatever came next. The following days flew by as Emily prepared herself for her meeting with Julian. She found herself thinking about the kind of person he must be, imagining the conversation they would have. She wondered how he would react to hearing more about her life, her work, and the experiences that had shaped her. Julian had made her feel like she was worth something again, and now she was eager to learn more about him, to understand the man who had impacted her life in such a short amount of time. When the day finally came, Emily stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her outfit for the third time. She had chosen a simple yet elegant dress, nothing too flashy, but something that made her feel confident and comfortable. She didn't want to overthink it. This wasn't a date, it was just two people meeting over coffee. But still, the butterflies in her stomach wouldn't settle. As she walked to the cafe where they had agreed to meet, she reminded herself to stay calm and enjoy the moment. She wasn't expecting anything. She was simply meeting someone who had been kind to her when she needed it the most. When she arrived at the cafe, she spotted him right away. Julian was sitting at a table near the window, his back straight, his posture confident, but his expression soft and welcoming. He looked even more handsome in person, if that was even possible. As she approached, he looked up and smiled. Emily, he said, standing up to greet her. It's great to finally meet you. The warmth in his voice made her heart flutter. It's great to meet you too, she replied, smiling back. They exchanged pleasantries before sitting down, and as the conversation flowed effortlessly between them, Emily felt a sense of ease she hadn't expected. Julian was charming, intelligent, and genuinely interested in what she had to say. The more they talked, the more Emily realized just how much they had in common. They shared similar values, passions, and even a sense of humor. She had no idea where this conversation would take them, but in that moment, it felt like everything had fallen into place. She was no longer the woman who had been left alone in a restaurant. She was someone who had made a choice to believe in herself, and in that choice, she had found something beautiful. She wasn't sure if this meeting would lead to something more, but for the first time in a long time, she was excited about the future, about the possibilities that lay ahead. As the conversation continued, Emily found herself relaxing more and more in Julian's presence. There was something magnetic about him, a calm confidence that made her feel at ease despite her initial nerves. They spoke about everything: her work, his business ventures, the small joys and challenges of daily life. As they shared stories and laughed, Emily realized just how much she enjoyed his company. It wasn't just his success or his wealth that intrigued her. It was the way he genuinely listened, the way he made her feel like she mattered. Julian had an uncanny ability to make people feel valued, and it was something Emily hadn't realized she needed until now. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she had to prove anything. She was just herself, and he seemed to appreciate that. They had spent hours talking, and neither of them seemed to want the conversation to end. Eventually, the cafe began to empty out, and Emily noticed the time. She was surprised at how quickly it had passed. "I should probably head home," she said, glancing at the clock. Julian looked at her with a smile. "I was hoping you would say that. I'd love to see you again, Emily. Would you be open to meeting again sometime?" His words made her heart race, but in a good way. It wasn't the nervous anxiety she had felt on previous dates. It was something new, something exciting. "I'd like that," she said, feeling her cheeks warm with a smile. As they walked out of the cafe together, Julian offered to drive her home. Emily hesitated for just a moment, but then she agreed. There was something so natural about their connection that she didn't feel any fear or hesitation. The car ride was filled with more easy conversation, and Emily couldn't help but notice how comfortable she felt around him. It felt like they had known each other for much longer than just a few hours. When they reached her apartment building, Julian turned to her, his expression soft but serious. "Emily," he said, "I really enjoy our time together. I hope we can do this again soon." His words, sincere and kind, made her heart swell. She smiled, nodding. "I'd like that too, Julian. A lot." As she stepped out of the car and waved goodbye, Emily's mind was racing. She couldn't believe how quickly things had changed. Just a few weeks ago, she had been unsure of herself, questioning her worth after Derek's behavior. But now, she was standing on the edge of something new, something promising. She had taken a chance on herself, and it was paying off. Over the next few days, Julian and Emily continued to talk and make plans. They shared more about their lives, their goals, and their dreams. As they spent more time together, Emily realized that Julian wasn't just a billionaire entrepreneur. He was someone who saw her as more than just a woman to date. He respected her independence, her ambition, and her strength. It was refreshing to meet someone who wasn't intimidated by her success, someone who supported her and wanted to see her thrive. Emily knew that this was something special. She didn't want to rush it or put any pressure on herself. She had spent so much of her life chasing after relationships that weren't right for her, but this felt different. Julian wasn't trying to change her or make her feel small. He was making her feel like she could be the best version of herself. That realization was enough to make her believe in the possibility of love again. But this time, it wasn't about finding someone to fill the gaps in her life. It was about building something real, something based on mutual respect, trust, and a shared vision for the future. As Emily lay in bed that night, reflecting on everything that had happened, she couldn't help but smile. She was exactly where she needed to be. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life, and for the first time in a long time, she was excited to see where it would take her. Emily had never imagined that her life could change so quickly. Just a month ago, she was stuck in a relationship that made her feel small and unimportant, and now, here she was, on the verge of something new, something she never expected. Her connection with Julian had grown stronger with each passing day. They shared long conversations, often lasting late into the night, about everything from their childhood memories to their goals for the future. Emily found herself drawn to Julian in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just his wealth or his success. It was his kindness, his ability to make her feel heard, valued, and important. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was with someone who truly saw her for who she was. It wasn't about the money or the fancy cars or the big houses. It was about the way Julian made her feel, the way he encouraged her to keep pursuing her dreams and supported her every step of the way. As the weeks passed, they spent more time together, going on walks in the park, having dinners at small, intimate restaurants, and even just sitting together in silence, comfortable in each other's presence. There was no rush. There was no pressure. Everything felt easy, natural, and right. One afternoon, Julian invited Emily to his office for a tour. She was nervous at first, wondering if it would feel like she was stepping into his world, a world so different from hers. But when she arrived, she was greeted with a warm smile and a casual atmosphere that made her feel instantly at ease. Julian's office wasn't what she expected. It wasn't cold or imposing, but warm and inviting. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and there was an art collection that spoke to his personality, simple but thoughtful, each piece telling a story. As they walked through the office, Julian introduced her to his team, who greeted her with genuine smiles and made her feel welcome. She was surprised by how down-to-earth everyone was, considering the success of his company. "It's important to me that the people I work with feel like they belong here," Julian explained as they walked down the hallway. "We're a team, and everyone's voice matters." Emily couldn't help but smile. It was a refreshing change from the corporate world she had known. As they reached the rooftop terrace, Julian turned to her with a look of sincerity. "I wanted to share this with you," he said, gesturing to the breathtaking view of the city. "This is where I come to think, to clear my mind. It's where I come when I need perspective." Emily stood next to him, taking in the view. It was incredible. The city stretched out before them, and for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. She had been so focused on finding the right relationship, the right person, but she had never stopped to think about what she really wanted for herself. Being with Julian wasn't about filling a void or fixing something broken. It was about two people coming together and supporting each other, both growing and evolving. "I love this," Emily said softly, her gaze lingering on the skyline. "Thank you for showing me this side of your life." Julian smiled, his eyes meeting hers with a warmth that made her heart flutter. "It's my pleasure. You deserve to see it." For the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The life she had imagined for herself was no longer out of reach. She was building it, step by step, and with Julian by her side, she knew that the possibilities were endless. As they stood there together, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the distance, Emily realized that she was no longer searching for validation. She had found it within herself, and now, with Julian, she was building a future that was hers to create. As the weeks went by, Emily's life seemed to be falling into place in a way she hadn't expected. Her relationship with Julian continued to grow, but it wasn't just about the time they spent together. It was about how he made her feel. He didn't just listen. He saw her, really saw her, in a way that made her feel understood and valued. She was no longer the person who had doubts about her worth, the one who wondered if she deserved more. She knew now that she did. It was one afternoon, as they were walking through a small park near his office, that Julian stopped and turned to her with a look of quiet determination. "Emily," he began, his voice steady but soft, "I know we've been seeing each other for a while now, and I think it's time I say something that's been on my mind for a while." Emily stopped in her tracks, looking at him with curiosity. Her heart raced a little, wondering if he was about to say something important. "You've been an incredible influence on my life," he continued, "and I've come to realize just how much I care about you. I don't want to take this lightly, and I know we've both been cautious about rushing things, but I'm ready to take the next step if you are." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had been waiting for a moment like this, but hadn't quite expected it to come so soon. Julian had been nothing but thoughtful and patient with her, and now, he was giving her the space to decide where this relationship could go. "What do you mean by the next step?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Julian smiled, his eyes warm with affection. "I mean, I want us to explore this fully. I want to be with you, Emily, and I want to see where this could go. I'm ready for something real with you, something lasting." Emily felt a rush of emotions, joy, surprise, and even a little fear, but most of all, she felt a sense of certainty. She had known from the beginning that Julian was different from anyone she had ever met, but hearing him speak those words made everything feel even more real. "I think I'm ready for that too," she said, her voice steady now, the words coming easier than she had expected. Julian's smile grew wider, and he stepped closer to her. "You make me incredibly happy, Emily," he said softly. "I want to build something beautiful with you." As they stood there, in the middle of the park, Emily felt as though the world had opened up to her in a new way. She wasn't just stepping into a new relationship. She was stepping into a life that was full of potential and possibility. They didn't have all the answers, and there would be challenges ahead, but Emily knew that with Julian, she was not alone. She had learned so much about herself over the past few months, about her strength, her worth, and her ability to choose happiness over anything else. As they continued walking hand in hand, the future no longer seemed uncertain. It felt full of promise. Julian wasn't perfect, but he made her feel like she was enough, just as she was. And for the first time in a long time, Emily felt like she had everything she needed to build the life she had always dreamed of. Together, they had so much to look forward to. This was just the beginning of their story. As the months passed, Emily and Julian's relationship grew stronger with each passing day. They found themselves not just partners, but true companions, building a foundation based on respect, trust, and mutual admiration. Emily had always believed that love meant compromise, but with Julian, it felt more like growth. They encouraged each other to chase their dreams, to push beyond their comfort zones, and to take risks. Julian's unwavering support made Emily realize that she had the power to do anything she set her mind to, and with him by her side, the possibilities felt endless. She had never imagined that she would feel this way, especially after everything that had happened with Derek. The pain of that relationship now felt like a distant memory, a lesson learned that had led her to something far more fulfilling. It was one evening, as they were having dinner at a small bistro that had become their favorite spot, that Julian looked at her with a serious expression. Emily noticed the change in his demeanor and immediately sensed that something important was about to happen. "Emily," Julian began, his voice soft but filled with intent, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've built together. I know we've talked about the future before, but I want to ask you something that's been on my mind for a while now." Emily's heart skipped a beat, and she placed her fork down, giving him her full attention. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice steady but full of curiosity. Julian smiled, his eyes filled with warmth, but there was also a depth to his gaze that she hadn't seen before. "I love you, Emily. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build a future together, a real future. So, I'm asking you, will you marry me?" The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Emily was speechless. Her mind raced as she processed everything he had just said. She had never expected this moment to come so soon, but deep down, she knew it was the right time. Julian wasn't just asking her to be his partner. He was asking her to join him on a journey, one where they would face the future hand in hand, supporting each other through whatever came their way. She looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity and love, and a sense of calm washed over her. "Yes," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." The moment the words left her lips, Julian's face lit up with joy. He reached across the table and took her hand, holding it gently as if he was afraid to let go. "I promise you, Emily, I'll spend every day of my life making sure you know how much I love you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Emily squeezed his hand, feeling a wave of happiness wash over her. In that instant, everything she had hoped for, everything she had dreamed of, was right in front of her. She wasn't just in a relationship anymore. She was on the verge of something even greater, something that would last a lifetime. As they left the bistro, walking through the streets hand in hand, Emily couldn't help but smile. This was the beginning of a new chapter in her life. She had found someone who saw her for who she was, someone who loved her completely and unconditionally. It wasn't just the fairy tale romance she had always imagined. It was better. It was real. And as they stood under the stars that night, Emily knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. They were a team, and together, there was nothing they couldn't overcome.